I'm Linda van Tilburg for BizNews. Universities worldwide rely on their alumni to contribute significantly to their revenue. A prime illustration of this phenomenon is Harvard University in the United States, where philanthropy stands as the single largest source of funding for the institution. Well, recently, the University of Pretoria, or Tuks, has taken proactive steps to tap into the potential of its alumni, and they've established foundations in both the US and the UK, aiming to engage with former students who have relocated to these destinations. Well, with me in the studio is Rikus Delport, the Director of Institutional Development at Tuks, to shed light on these initiatives. Welcome, Rikus.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, what motivated you to establish these overseas foundations to engage with alumni?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Unlike Harvard, we rely on three sources for our revenue. So the first one is government funding. The second one is tuition fees and accommodation fees. And then the third income stream is what we called third stream income. So this is where we rely on our team going out and raising funds from foundations, institutions, and alumni, locally and across the world. And if you have to divide it, it'll probably be about a third from each of those income streams that contributes towards the income of the university. So what we have realized that there's been a significant decline, in fact, in the funding that we've received from government over the past few years in the form of the block grants and the other sort of funding that we get from them, and then also the fact that we've not been allowed to increase tuition fees by as much as we would have liked to. That's also placed us in a bit of a financial situation where we now need to look at other ways of finding additional resources of revenue. The university last year, well, in fact, it started about 2 years ago, already started putting together a financial sustainability plan, and we looked at how we can improve our income streams. And one of the ways that was identified was to look at starting with foundations across the world to see how we can reach out to our alumni to see how they can contribute to the funding of the university, to give back, so to speak. We've seen that as a very successful way of enhancing our income, or enhancing income in general, if you look at what's happening at other universities in the world. And again, if you look at the US universities, they've been, in fact, very successful in getting their alumni to put back and give back in the way of financial contributions.
Well, we can't compare, of course, to Harvard, but Harvard is something like 50 billion, it was in 22, their endowment. I mean, that is the same as a GDP of a smaller economy, or even a mid-size economy. Do you have a target that you want to raise?
So at this stage, because it's still in its infancy, I mean, the US Foundation, for instance, the UP's US Foundation, is about 3 years old now. So we've just managed to put everything in place. So that includes, getting all the admin sorted out and making sure that we comply with all the local legislation in the country. The UK Foundation was just launched about a month ago. Well, this month, in fact, a few weeks ago. So we haven't set a target as such, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that we first get all our alumni involved and then go to them and say, look, here we have a proper body that you can donate money through to assist students in South Africa. And and hopefully, they'll come to the party. We're very confident that we've seen people getting involved, even on the launch day itself. A number of our alumni come to us and said, look, I want to become involved. Tell me how I can support the university's foundation.
Oh, and so the response has been good from both London and...
positive. I mean, I think, as I said, it's still in the beginning. The first thing for us now is to start forming chapters. So, by forming a chapter in the cities that the foundations are based, we get the people involved. So then the network starts to build, and from there we hope to grow it, and we see how alumni can then contribute to the university. I think it's important here, and I'm sorry, I'm interrupting myself here. If you think about ways of alumni can make contributions. It is not just funding; it's also helping us with setting up networks, right? Introducing us to potential funders. So we have people working, for instance, in financial institutions in London and New York, and they come into contact with funders, trustees, foundations that look at ways of that would like to get involved in funding institutions like the University of Pretoria. And we're hoping for them to make introductions, to put us into contact with those people. Then we'll go out and meet with them. And that's another way of them assisting us in building those foundations. At the same time, we're looking at alumni contributing through, offering internships or mentorship for students. So there's lots of ways for the alumni to get involved. So although our focus in terms of the foundations is very much on the funding side, it is also for us, there's also other ways that alumni can get involved and making a difference.
So what is the alumni getting back? If you say, okay, come involved, what does it mean for you?
So I think from a funding perspective, there's always tax incentives for alumni based in the countries that they are in. Interestingly enough, the US, as I've said, is very well developed in terms of making contributions to charitable funds like ourselves. So what they do there is, for instance, in addition to the tax rebates that they get when they contribute to foundations like ours, there's also, what they call the match giving. It's really where companies that you work for will match whatever you donate to that institution, and that's also another bit tax benefit for the company as well as for the individual. So hopefully they get something back in that way. But then there's also, I think it's just that if there's a good culture of giving back, showing people that you're prepared to support your alma mater, showing people that you're prepared to help a student in need, I think that it makes you feel good about, doing something and making a contribution to not just the country, but also to the world. Because in the end, the graduates that graduate from the University of Pretoria go on and they make a difference in the rest of the world. They contribute to the economies of many countries. We have approximately 300 alumni, and many of them are based in other countries where they actively participate in those countries. They make a contribution, not just in terms of the taxes that they pay, but and participating in the economy, but also in terms of the research maybe that they're involved with, and how that has an impact on the country and its people.
Well, we've seen recently with Harvard that also gives them a bit of clout, because they actually got rid of the president when she became politically controversial. I'm not sure that the alumni tax would have clout to steer the university in a direction.
So there's several ways that the alumni at our university can be involved in the managing of the university. For instance, we have the convocation board, which consists of alumni that is in an advisory capacity, and they have regular engagements with the executive of the university where they guide us on how they think, we should be doing things. And then that's always obviously welcome. We have many experts. The board is made up of experts in terms of finance, technology, investments, whatever. So they definitely make a contribution, and they definitely guide the university's management in terms of what they think is good for the institution. And if they've already bought in like that, it means that they participate and that they can really make a difference in terms of what they can do for the institution. So we welcome that relationship, and it's part of the university's tradition to look to its alumni to advise, and to steer and to guide us.
So if I, as an alumni, and I am one, where would my money go? So what would it be used for?
It depends very much on where you would like it to go. So we have a number of projects, for instance. Those projects range from research projects right through to help for students. It can go towards bursaries, accommodation, tuition fees. It could go towards helping students who are struggling to find meals on a daily basis. We have a program. We have a pantry where students can come, especially those students that are struggling, can come and take groceries, and if they're struggling to find food, for instance, and go and prepare their own meals. So your contribution can go to whatever you feel is a worthy cause or something that you feel interested in. And there's a range of those, and it's all available on our website. So if you go to the University of Pretoria website, you'll see there's a special section called Giving at UP. And if you click on there, there's many different ways that you can contribute. And as I said earlier, it's not just about financial contributions. It's also about offering your services as a mentor or as an employer to provide internship opportunities for students or newly graduates.
When I look at your brochure, and you were talking about this problem of funding the missing middle, and that some of the money would be used for that. What is the missing middle?
In South Africa, we have the what we call free education, and that's really where government supports the poor students, the financially needy students. And currently, those are students that come from a household where the joint income is below 350,000 Rand a year. So those students qualify for free education. So they get the tuition fees and accommodation fees are paid for them. Then we have the students from rich parents. Obviously, they can afford to pay their tuition fees. And then there's the missing middle, which what we call, or what was coined the missing middle is. Those are really students that come from not poor families, but families where it's a single parent household, for instance. It's an household where the parents are either policemen or teachers or nurses. They don't earn a lot of money, and sometimes it's just they're not able to afford tertiary education for their children. And those are the students that are currently not being funded by anything. So recently, the Minister of Higher Education did announce a new scheme to help fund that group of students. That's still being in the process of being rolled out. It hasn't happened yet, but hopefully that will go some way in alleviating the pressure on those parents and helping them to get their children to attend university as well.
So how big does that group at Tuks?
We don't have the exact numbers, but if you think about the way we look at it, we see usually we have about 55,000 students at the university. About 10,000 of those students are qualify for NSFAS. So those are NSFAS, what we call students that are funded by government. And then we reckon we have another about 10 to 12% of missing middle students at the universities, but the exact number is not known, simply because students don't necessarily declare all of that. There's no ways of knowing what your parents earn if it's not a requirement for you to submit it somewhere, like it is a requirement, for instance, for NSFAS students.
Are there any plans to expand these alumni engagements to other regions, not only the UK and the US? Like Australia, there's a large group of South Africans there.
Yeah. So it's exactly what we're trying to do at the moment. Our next port of call is Australia. So we've recently established a new chapter in Perth. So, and hopefully we can then also follow that up with the establishment of a charitable trust in Australia. We want to do our homework before we do that. It's obviously, it's very important that we look at the potential of, what is there, is the environment friendly to establish a charitable foundation? Because you must remember, not all countries look at this as a way of or as a what's the word I'm looking for? As a friendly way of raising funds in a country. Some countries, would not support that. You obviously need to be able to offer some sort of benefits for the alumni that are based in those countries before you can go ahead and establish a foundation like that. But we certainly are looking at Australia and New Zealand, another country, and then maybe in a country in Europe, and then we also have strong support in Canada. There's a number of our alumni based in Canada. And then of course Africa, as our student population becomes more and more diverse, a lot of our graduates find themselves in countries in Africa. We have a strong contingent in Kenya already, and we're also looking at establishing a foundation there at some point.
Can we just look at a current issue? There's been issues last year with the NSFAS allowance payments. Are you having similar problems in the current academic year?
Yeah, we still have a few issues. I think just the sheer number of applications that NSFAS have received, make it very difficult to process. So we are still waiting for some of our students who are wanting to register to find out if they've been approved by NSFAS. That hasn't been finalized. It is a pity because we've already started with the academic year, and those students cannot register until they've heard back from NSFAS. We are working very closely with NSFAS, and they are helping us to make sure that we get the information through and that we get the students vetted as soon as possible. But that is still an issue, yes.
And also, I just want to ask about some campuses in South Africa have not been as stable as in my days. I think there's sort of much more students, probably more demanding, and at the moment you are dealing with a strike. I mean, how do universities navigate these turbulent waters that they have to face every now and then and teach people, and you only have something like 9-10 months to get them through a year?
Yeah, that's really challenging, but I think universities are microcosms of what's happening in broader society. So there's the socioeconomic issues facing this country is very real at universities as well, and that's why we see this constant flux at universities where students, there's a huge issue around the lack of accommodation. The lack of funding to get students into university. And there's this huge demand. If you think about it, the University of Pretoria receives about annually, or this year, the last year, we received about more than 60,000 applications to study at university from first years. We have places, we can only accommodate about 8,500 students. So there's a huge mismatch there. So if the demand exceeds supply, then you can imagine that it would lead to some tensions. And that's what you see, that coupled with as I said, the socioeconomic conditions in the country, high employment, all of that makes for a perfect mix of instability. And it happens at institutions as well. And we've seen that. Institutions, I think, are, it varies, but institutions are dealing with this in the best way they can. It's not always easy. But we've always managed to complete an academic year, even during COVID, although it took us a month or two longer, but we've managed to complete the academic year and to see students graduate successfully. So at least we can still say that. And we still do that while we maintain really high standards. We are still rated as an institution, and I'm not speaking about the other universities, as one of the best institutions in the world. I think, and we still get a lot of interest from foreign students wanting to come and study at universities like ourselves.
But foreign students more from Africa or also from overseas?
From overseas, from all over.
Everywhere.
Asia, US, Europe, also Africa. They make up the majority, but definitely from other countries as well, yes.
So how would University of Pretoria be rated internationally for its research and for the courses that it presents?
So I think the university is very fortunate that it has some of the best researchers in the world. They compare really with some of the best researchers in the world. If you think about just one example, our veterinary sciences faculty, they call to countries across the world to help with research, doing research in those countries, also to help with issues that emerge in those countries. So we're actually very proud with the work that we're doing, not just in terms of veterinary science, but also agricultural science. The work that we do in terms of food security, sustainability, that sort of thing. University, they are obviously they're experts in terms of drought resistance crops, how the research that we do in terms of that, and the work and the contributions that we make towards that. So the university is seen as one of a leading research institution when it comes to helping other countries and making an impact in the world, in terms of, well, not both, but in terms of all the fields that we experts in. So it's for us, it's a great opportunity. Yeah.
Oh, Rikus Delport from the University of Pretoria. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.